All right. Can folks hear us? I believe we should be broadcasting audio at this point. I'm going to wait for someone in chat to say something.
Good morning, chat / afternoon. Probably afternoon, really.
Yeah, just barely by the minimum. Okay, got noise. For folks who can hear me, am I coming through on both audio channels? I know in the past I had issues where my mic setup has pushed me over to one channel or the other. Just want to make sure that I'm not like making for a weird experience for folks who only use the one earphone. Sounding different. It's pretty quiet.
You sound a little stuffy, but so do I to myself, so that's fine.
I sound a bit off. I'm getting you in both ears. Okay. In that case,
it's a good start.
Yeah, it's more than we've had on some of these. Maybe I need a little bit more water. Doing the super professional thing of drinking water while a hot mic is in front of me. All right. Let's see. I've been inside for what at this point, like 6 months. So I'm sure I'm like operating under a different set of parameters. Also, I've been sleeping terribly lately, so this is a little bit of morning voice. Let's see. We got a decent amount of folks in here. Reminder, there is the MTG bot, so if you want to, I believe it's exclamation point card and then a card name if you want to get Oracle text in the chat. The chat will be captured as part of this, so, behave yourselves. If you want to get your high mobs in, now would be the time. But yeah, I believe we are good to go here. Thank you for testing that one out, Simples. Yeah. I think you can do other stuff, but that's the one that I know. Yes, we're running through our usual test things. Stormcrow for the memes and Abandon Hope for different memes. All right. So today we are going to be going through Double Masters, Zendikar Rising, and some assorted housekeeping stuff. It's been a minute. Might take us a moment to get back in the swing of things, but we have been having a whole bunch of sets come out, and hopefully that means we've got some good stuff for the cube. I think there's some good stuff. And we can start things off here. There we go. We've got a nice, beautiful chat. We've got our little icons there so you can see who's speaking. And we are going to start stuff off with Ancestral Blade, which this card is just good. Like, there's been past bears with like an add-on mechanic that I haven't appreciated, but I think bear that leaves behind a short sword is actually incredibly good. Yeah. Someone in the chat saying snap include, snap in. Yeah, I think like this is a no-brainer. The question of what we're going to cut for it is something I can't answer this exact moment. Just because I haven't put in like serious thought to it, but like I want this in the cube. I think it is good. Yeah, like I don't think there's a reason we shouldn't run this, but yeah. Fizzle, do you have any other thought on this?
I mean well, yeah. My silly joke was going to be when I saw the snap include was the snap in is the easy part. The snap out is not the part.
Yeah.
I've been looking a lot at the persist variant creatures that we have in white, and I'm very torn because sometimes obviously leaving the battlefield matters. We create interesting decisions here, but maybe not in gameplay by removing it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like it might be difficult to find something to pull out for this, but I'm sure we will when we're actually under the gun and have to make a call on that. So I think looking at from folks in the chat, it looks like this is universally a yes, do include, good. So glad about that. Let me just find out what our next one is. Here's one that I kept forgetting about.
Is it the Walker token?
No, we're not opening that can of worms today. So yeah, this is Crib Swap. So this is a 3-mana instant speed kind of path swords effect, a removal spell with downside. And in this case, it's a 1/1 changeling, which thankfully we don't have a ton of tribal interaction. Worth noting, the token can't be mutated onto or stopped from attacking by Bonds of Faith, but like those are relatively minor things in the great scheme of things. I don't know, this isn't super exciting, but it's probably just good.
Yeah. Basically the thing that has me thinking this is very reasonable, the combination of it's an instant and it says exile, because we are seeing those persist variant creatures. You are preventing, I want to say Doom Necromancer, but that's not the name. Doom Traveler is not going to give its token Doom Dissenter. There we go. I was thinking of.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All the 2 mana, like there is a 2/2 here somewhere and there is a 1/1 here somewhere, and they'll show up at different times, kind of effects.
Yeah. You replace whatever that creature was with only a 1/1, and you don't have to worry about the death trigger. Death doesn't happen.
Yeah, I definitely like this. It's kind of nice and simple. We have heard the complaints from some members of the community about removal density, so this will probably, if it goes in, wind up eating up another removal spell. I'm sure there is something that we could swap out for this. Trying to keep those a little bit more static in terms of volume. But yeah, I think Crib Swap's a very reasonable card. Decontest it would probably replace one of the various auras. It's a little bit more permanent. Although with certain decks, we will get to some removal for enchantment later. For some decks, they're basically equivalent in terms of permanency.
The one thing that I'll note before we tackle the other comments in the chat real quick, we will be requesting feedback, or at least I will be requesting feedback on the Totem Guide Helium's Pilgrim hit rate, I guess. If we start pulling out some of the arrest or passive experience, I'd like to know how people are experiencing that.
Yeah, I think that's a very reasonable thing to reassess, since right now those are mostly in the queue to grab various removal spells. The next thing, let me just make sure I've got the name of this card correct, because there are 2 versions of it. Is it cast off or cast down? Black removal spell. I think it's cast down.
This should be cast down.
All right, this is cast down. It is a incredibly efficient removal spell. As it stands, unless we choose to put in Lady Orca or some other similar like bad legend,
it's Romano Pietra.
Ramirez de Pietro. Yeah.
Yes.
Unless we put in one of those legendary creatures, this is just a 2-man murder. I know that there are, until Commander Legends comes out, probably still amazing after that. That is a fair point. Like, we don't know what is going to go on with that set, besides there will be a lot of legendary creatures. I assume that the Prismatic Piper is the only one we're probably going to see at common. Although I guess actually technically that's a special rarity or something. there is a beautiful dark frame at FNM Pro. That is correct, James. Yeah. Again, like I feel like this is a common trend with the double master stuff. Is it's just reasonable, good, better take than we have on this effect at present. Anything else before we move on, Fizzled?
No, we have that same issue where this is a very good, efficient, very good. This is an efficient spell, which feels very good when you're looking at it, and then hard part of cube design, what makes for it.
Yeah. All right, and on to even more removal. Just really, really hammering this one home. This was a card that I was super, super excited to see. I really enjoy a braid in any sort of 1v1 competitive format, just because at the end of the day, this is main deckable artifact removal, and that's just like really clean, really solid. I know that folks in the past have complained about lack of ways to deal with artifacts and enchantments. I think that this is a really nice and concise way to do it. I think this might become the best spell in the cube. I don't want to make bold claims such as that, but like this is a really solid piece of removal, especially because it does just have a mode that deals with creatures at the magic number of 3, and it also can remove artifacts. So I think this just gets in.
Yeah, they're honestly, no, we have to protect the signet. We need more signets. We need arcane signets. Essentially, I love this card. It is maybe all-time top 3 of my favorite red 2-drop spells. That's it does a lot. How much of the cube does this kill?
Let me just actually check. Toughness less than 4. Let's see. There are 174 cards in the cube that it kills with its first mode, not accounting for token producers and whatnot.
There are 215 creatures. You said 174?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good 85%.
Yeah. Worth noting, like, there is one thing. I guess technically, like, all of the artifacts can be got. I do like this just as a way to, like, eat up utility artifacts as well. Like, you know, you're on a white weenie and your opponent plays serrated arrow, or Boros, I guess. Your opponent plays serrated arrows, you're having a very bad time. So, with that said, I do think that this is an include. Red has a lot of removal spells. This is an easy textural tweak. Subs and Prophet of the Peak. Yep, this does just nuke a 5/5 sometimes. But yeah, I think that this is a solid include for the cube. 42 looks like it doesn't die to a braid. Yeah, 3 is a very magical number in this cube. If you can get to 3 damage, it's probably killing a thing. All right, let's move on from this. This is one that folks wanted us to talk about that I still have very mixed feelings about. So this is Rapacious Dragon. This is a 5-mana 3/3 flyer. When it ETBs, you get 2 treasure tokens. So it's kind of a 3-mana 3/3 flyer. And I do want to make it clear that I am saying that with a big, big asterisk. I have, for the time that I've been on the Pauper Cube committee, tried to pull Red's curve a little bit lower. I have come around on this a little bit. I don't dislike it as much as I used to, but Yawn dies to a braid. Okay. My big concern with this is, while it is a quote-unquote 3-mana creature, you do have to have 5 mana sources to cast it. I don't know. Fizzle, do you have a different take on this at all, or?
No, it's a variant on that take. In part because being a lawyer makes me think, what is the worst thing that could happen, and how often will that bad thing happen? In I was originally picturing this in Is It or Gruel, and thinking, okay, you're going to try to draw a bunch of cards to get to your land so you can ramp this out, and then in green you have no cards left in your hand. In Is It, you might have another card left to do something after you get those tokens, the treasure tokens. But wouldn't you have rather cast a 3 mana spell and a 2 mana spell?
I mean, this still kind of lets you
I still think that's the case.
This still kind of lets you double spell, as long as your other thing is exactly 1 or 2 mana. But
right,
yeah, it is kind of an awkward position there. Got Chaves in chat. Green tends to own Gruul top end. Red does not offer a lot. Is it the same thing? Is it as winning with 3/4 flyers in blue? It is not providing a game enders. And I guess the question is, like, in that case, do we view this as sort of a soft gold card, where this doesn't show up in mono red, but it shows up in red X decks that want a reasonable body in the air? It's a splash enabler in big red decks, which isn't really a viable archetype yet. Yeah, it's not doing enough for me. I will note that there is like a version of a Pauper Cube that has the Ghostly Flicker combo in it, and this does somehow factor into one of those combos, like as redundancy for your Peregrine Drakes and so on. This is one of those things where, like, if someone can come through with a really solid argument for it, I could be swayed, but I think it's just off from where I want it to be. And that's my...
Oh, that's the issue. So I wasn't thinking about our good friend, the Secret Grixis Flyer support deck, where you have Rapacious Dragon, Displace, and Mnemonic Wall, so you can go infinite on Enter the Battlefield triggers. And
yeah, there's like some weird way to make this go infinite. There was in I believe original Ixalan. Yes. Okay. I'm just gonna pull up the double card here. We do already have Prosperous Pirates, which does the treasure half of this. And I know that for a while there was some sort of combo in Pauper constructed using this and Flicker to create loops that did things. Yeah. But yeah, I don't think at the present moment Rapacious Dragon is something I'm looking to put in, but it could. That's an opinion I am very willing to admit I could be wrong on. Let's move on to our last thing from Double Masters that we have on our list, and another exciting one that generated quite a bit of discussion in the Discord. So this is Conclave Naturalists. It is a 5-mana 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Things worth noting, this does not eat your own artifact or enchantment if it's the only valid target. I like that. Doesn't die to Braid Busted. Yep. It is a very reasonable body for the amount of mana you're investing in it. Like, a 4/4 is reasonably large in this format, and even if you don't get one of your opponent's things, this might have to get double blocked to die in combat. It's basically FTK sometimes. I think that's a bit strong wording on it, but I see what you're getting at. Like, these Necrotal type of effects, even when they're kind of narrow, like, there is a lot of value in there.
I would have accepted Reclamation Stage plus Wild Growth. Not Wild Growth. Man. Wild Size.
There you go. It does have a very sweet Howard Lyon promo that I've put up on the screen. Is Naya the only enchantment creature we run? Off the top of my head, I cannot think of anything. So enchantment. Naiad of the Hidden Coves appears to be the only creature enchantment or enchantment creature?
That is the only one that starts as a creature, yes. Elephant Guide if you are squinting very hard.
But it does get hit by this ETB, I think is what we're getting at. About 1 mana too expensive with no target,
Correct.
but a 4/4 is still playable. Yeah, like I think the main crux of this is it's not always going to eat something, but sometimes you just need something that is a bigger body than what your opponent's going to have, and that's fine. I do want to bring up one thing that I saw talked about. I'm going to double card here for a moment. Wicker Bough Elder does exist. It is kind of a tricky card in this comparison because at the end of the day, both of these are, in theory, 5 mana, kill an artifact or enchantment, have a 4/4. The catch is Wicker Bough's Fail Case is a 4 mana 3/3, because that does need a target to actually activate its ability, removing it. Is Elder not in the cube? I don't believe it is. I believe it was at one point. I could be mistaken on that, though.
It's been a few years.
Yeah. So I do think, personally for me, the guarantee of a 4/4 is more appealing to me, even if the 5 mana does have to be spent up front. Like, there are several times where in other cubes, for example, I have played, or even retail limited, where I've played Wickerbow Elder and waited until I have 5 mana just because I need to activate it immediately. So it really does come down to, like, what is our fail case, and running a 4 mana 3/3 is, like, not super great. Like, it's a hill giant. So I lean towards Conclave Naturalist, but there could be a discussion of just popping both of these in, since I do know that there is quite a lot of concern regarding the density of enchantment-based removal.
FYI, Wickerbow came out Outrider for in Kaladesh / Commander 19. Huh. 2. Not 19, 16.
Huh.
Right.
Right.
So yes, it was in here, but it's been a while.
Yeah, I think Naturalist has a home. Wickerbow Elder might be something we bring in, and that's gonna depend on future discussions. So, yeah. Before we move on to Zendikar Rising, are there any double Masters cards that folks would like a discussion about, even if it's just a quick one? I'm gonna give the chat like a minute or so to catch up with this. Oh, I completely forgot about that one. Thank you, chat. I don't know how that one passed under my radar. Let me go back to single card here. There we go. Bone Picker.
Honestly, I assumed it was because you said there was nothing to think
about. Yeah, Bone Picker is very good. It is, creatures die a lot in this cube. And this can pretty frequently be a 1 mana 3/2 flyer with Death Touch, which, if you are in that situation, it is basically a Delver with less work. Yeah, I think this card is very good. I definitely forgot it when I was like jamming together our list of cards to talk about, and I apologize for that. Bone Picker is ready. God, do love me some classic Spider-Man. But yeah, I think this card is quite good. Anything else? Is there something I'm missing here, Fizzled?
No, it's the power is actually better than most of Black's 4-drops. So if you had to pay full price for it, it's not bad. We'll note that in Amonkhet sealed / pre-release, Bone Picker went the distance for me in 2 different rounds. I love him.
Yeah, I think even paying full rate on this is still like, okay, cool. I'm just gonna beat you to death with a 3/2 in the air. Like, sometimes that happens. Yeah, I think this is completely serviceable. I think stuff dies frequently enough in this cube where a large chunk of the time this is going to be 1 mana, and when it's 4 mana, you know, if it's 4 mana, it feels like likely the board is not super populated anyway, which means it's or there's a board stall, right? And no one wants to be the first one to attack in. And just jamming this at 4 mana and having an evasive threat feels completely a-okay to me. All right. I did see someone mentioning Frogify, which I will pull up for a quick second here because we probably should touch on it. Frogify it's Kesmina's transmutation. It turns something into a 1/1. It loses all abilities. I am very lukewarm on these things. I was very excited when Kesmina's transmutation hit because it was really good in War Limited. I have grown less fond of these effects, specifically because it does enable a chump block or possibly a 2-for-1 trade. Like, you kind of write off anything that Frogify lands on, and yeah, I am not a huge fan of this. If someone else wants to take up the other side of that argument, feel free. I will listen, but I'm not huge on it.
Yeah, I'm not far different. There's enough different copies of this removal aura that pick whichever art you like the most, but I don't think it's critical. It's not necessarily more interesting than other blue has available as removal.
All right. In that case, we will move on to Zendikar Rising. It's not new, but Weapon Surge seems decent. We can talk about Weapon Surge later. Has anyone tested over Everflowing Chalice? I think Everflowing Chalice is like probably reasonable. I just don't think that... I don't think there are decks that make good enough use of this to really... Like, we don't have Tron lands in this format. Like, I don't think there's a good way to, like, utilize this. You could get to an early Ulamog's Crusher, I feel like, is probably your best outcome. As someone said earlier, no joy has been sparked by this for me. Yeah, I think it's a perfectly reasonable thing that if folks want to use it in their fork of the cube to test it out, I would say go ahead, but we don't have any obvious applications for it. A lot of the time I feel like it's going to be Mind Stone without that second activated ability. All right, let's move on to Zendikar Rising then. And we're going to start stuff off with a bit of a recurring theme here. And it's Nahiri's Binding. So Nahiri's Binding is... It does mention Planeswalkers. We don't have Planeswalkers at common. We're just going to read it as written. So it's 1 white, enchantment aura, enchant creature, enchanted permanent, can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. I think this card is quite good.
It's powerful arrest.
Yeah. It is another arrest. We currently have suppression bonds, which does have a bit more play. Let me pull that one up just so folks can who are playing along at home can actually have both of these up. So this is a 4-mana variant. It does enchant non-land permanent, so it's a little bit wider in its applications. This was what I was thinking about maybe swapping out for 2 reasons. Nahiri's Binding is a mana cheaper but double white pips, so it's less splashable, and it is not quite as much a catch-all answer. I think, like, I've heard the comments about removal being a little bit too plentiful and a little bit too good, and I think that this helps make the removal more efficient but a little bit more narrow in a way that I personally enjoy. I'm sure that there is a counter argument here of something I'm forgetting that Suppression Bonds does that I don't remember. But yeah, this would be more
the
of
answer is always just Pestilence.
Yeah, it's pretty much Pestilence. Bonds is very expensive and looks bad besides Faith Fetters. That is a fair point. Like, you do have in the cube. Let me just pull that up. We've got Faith's Fetters, which gains you 4 life and technically does do some things differently. Like, Suppression Bonds does shut off mana abilities for what it's worth. The amount of times that is going to be super relevant, I think, is pretty... Is the 3/3 flyer from Theros still in? Oh, the Devotion one. Yes, it is. That's a fair point. Like, this does count as 2 white pips towards, oh goodness. What is that thing called? Because I know it's misfiled as a 5/5. Oh, it isn't. We actually moved it down to the correct mana cost. What is that dang thing called?
Daybreak Chimera.
Daybreak Chimera. Oop. I can't type today. There we go. Daybreak Chimera. Alright, so we have Daybreak Chimera still in the cube. This does technically have mild synergy there. I don't think that this 1/2 combo is, wowing anyone or, breaking anything wide open, but I don't know. I just like Nahiri's Blessing as slightly more restrictive than some of the other options, so it does sort of fit better in a mono or base white deck. And I feel like that might help with some of the concerns regarding how it feels to play against removal in this format. That's my piece on it. Fizzle, do you have anything before we move on?
I guess really the big thing for me is often when I end up drafting white, I'm either trying to play control or I'm trying to play a white weenie version, and I end up clustered at the 4 mana spot. I don't mind moving things out of that spot for both white weenie and control. Yeah, that's it. I like the idea of the removal being something other than 4-drops, since the white 4-drop creatures are the most interesting things going on, I think, in white.
Cool. I'm
torn as to whether this is the right answer. Sorry, the most correct answer.
Fair enough.
That we have crib swap. Excuse me.
Yes, that is true. We are already looking at another white removal 3. All right, let's move on to another piece of removal, which I actually am very excited about. Let's talk about Bubble Snare. This card rules. So this is a blue mana for a claustrophobia effect. The catch is it doesn't tap the creature unless you want to pay 4. That said, a good chunk of creatures in this format are gonna be tapped at some point. I think this card is just very good. I don't really have much more to clarify on this. I think, like, compared to Narcolepsy, compared to Encrust, compared to Claustrophobia, I will take this every single time over those. The art is a little goofy, and I kind of love that too. There's just a very, like, folio kind of look to the monster's face. It has a lot more of a Gotham feel to it. I mean, I don't know. It would feel a lot more gotcha if it wasn't super easy. What's the 1 CMC one from the last Zendikar block? Are you thinking of? Oh goodness. I think I know what you're talking about. Are you?
Is that one of the Awakened ones?
It's one of the Surge ones. Or is this what you're thinking of, Speedy? Containment Membrane? Where it surges for a single blue? Yeah. Yeah, look at look at this very to use the parlance of the internet. This is a very you versus the guy she tells you not to worry about kind of affair. Yeah. I think, like, look at the difference. What? I actually no. I don't want to know how long ago Zendikar, Battle for Zendikar or Oath was. Look at the difference a few years makes. I think Bubble Center rules. It's probably getting in the cube. It'll probably cut another blue piece of interaction with a board. That's what I got. Fizzled?
I mean, I like it. I enjoy it. The what's the right way to describe this? One of the things that I really like about the Popper Cube is that when I meet somebody who hasn't played a ton of Magic, they are usually able to grok these spells. And one of the few things that's still in the cube that shouldn't be that wild is narcolepsy. I played like it's not even it's not like crazy wild. It's just I played against somebody who was I assume they were in high school. Honestly, everybody under the age of 25 looks kind of like a child to me. I feel very bad saying that. I'm an old man. Um, but this presumably high school age person had a pinger that was narcolepsied, and they could have activated it every one of their upkeeps and did not understand it because they were shortcutting the it's tapped during my main phase to it never on taps.
Yeah, I think
And this removes that.
It is a little bit simpler. It does remove some counterplay, which is something to be considered, but I don't know. That does really that comes down to private discussions on the committee about philosophy regarding ease of play. That said,
yes, whether it's a feel bad for a new player, it is a niche issue that not everybody will have.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to another blue spell that I quite like. I really like Deliberate. Preordains are good. Instant speed preordains are better. 2-mana preordains a little less good. That said, I misread this as Serum Visions a whole bunch, and I was still pretty excited about this. I think this card is good. It is the Magic 2. You can leave up a counterspell. You can leave up Deliberate and do whatever serves you best. I do want to just take a moment and pull up another thing because this is actually a discussion I had at work with Magic friends about it versus Anticipate. So Anticipate is an impulse effect. So same mana cost, same speed. And it does look at potentially the same number of cards. Both of these can look at 3 cards potentially. That said, I am personally a fan of assuming that most people have good cards in their deck and that Deliberate might let you just rearrange the top 2. I actually think Serum Visions is actually better. 1 CMC versus 2 is big for a cantrip. I hear you.
Sorry, my voice disappeared. I should be back.
All right, wonderful. Sorry about that. Yeah, so my thought process here is that I think that the difference between scry 2 and draw card at instant speed for 2 is a lot more powerful than the Serum Visions draw card sets some stuff up, especially in the late game. Like hitting a Deliberate late game versus hitting a Serum Visions where you just kind of have a random draw off the top versus being able to actually look through stuff. I think Deliberate is obviously less good turn 1 and maybe in some cases worse turn 2. But I think in the late game, Deliberate is just going to be a much more appreciated thing for you to see. I am also not in the 2-mana cantrips or stone unplayable camp. Decontest notes draw card is meaningful. Yep. We do have some stuff in the cube that cares about cards being drawn, and not a whole lot that punishes that action of draw a card. That's pretty much my thoughts on this. I've been a huge fan of preordained variants for quite some time. I am going to advocate strongly for this going in. That's my piece.
I think that's very much a reasonable. Chaves is saying Seordain is over this, and oh man, that's iffy. There's some nuances and edge cases in the cube, as per with Goblin Electromancer, where this might be better. But really, I like these 2-mana cantrips maybe more than I should. Uh, this art isn't amazing, but it's something that makes me chuckle every time I see it. I like it. I don't know what piece of gas to potentially remove to make room for it. The things that I overthink about are things like Reign of Revelation, but even that doesn't technically. So I'll be excited to see what other people think as far as they might replace.
Yeah. I will say, just as kind of an aside, I've been playing a lot of Canadian Highlander with a friend of mine over webcam, and I can confirm that you can get pretty loose with some of the cantrips you can play and still be okay with them. And I think Deliberate is still within like the realm of stuff that I'm happy with. I think once we start hitting 2-mana sorcery speed with no upside, I think that's the point where I might start being like, okay, this is a little sketch, but like even there, I'm still gonna consider it. All right, let's continue on. I said we would get to more enchantment removal, and let's talk about Feed the Swarm. It's a sorcery. It costs 2. It's black. Destroy target creature and enchantment an opponent controls. You lose life equal to that permanent's converted mana cost. Yes, this cannot blow up your own stuff. Those cases are narrow. I don't consider that a huge downside. I will say slapping targeted enchantment removal into black is pretty sweet. Yeah, I think the biggest downside for me is the type line that says sorcery. And I think apart from that, I'm pretty happy with the rest of the card. And I don't think sorcery is enough of a drawback to hold this out of the cube.
Yeah, I think I guess probably similarly, when we're looking for interesting decision making opportunities for cube design and for drafting and for play, uh, this has a whole bunch of options. Um, yeah, if you get all of the other 2-mana black removal spells, you think your life is at a premium, you'll just never play this. If you're somehow in black and you're going against the pestilence deck, you're going to want this. I think that's fair.
Shaves chimes in with, I think that this is good right now, but I feel that Wizards is finding where the balance for enchantment removal is in black. I think that within a year we will have an instant speed version of this. Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised to see them continue to play in this space, but I think
Decontest says that he doesn't care. He'll cast this on Gurmag Angler.
Yeah, like that's the thing.
Sometimes that's the right call.
Yeah, so sometimes you make plays that feel terrible and they're still correct, because sometimes you just need a blocker out of the way. Yeah, I think I love this. I do want to just bring up that one of the things I have considered pitching for a while now, let me just get it up as a second, is Vendetta. Vendetta is kind of this. It does have the non-black restriction. It doesn't allow regeneration, which I think is not a problem at the current moment in the cube. And it does it based on toughness. I have always really liked Vendetta as a piece of removal in Limited. I think it has an actual drawback, and it is very efficient. That said, I think Feed the Swarm has a little bit more utility, and I'm a big fan of that, even if it is sorcery speed. Yeah. All right. Let's go to red and talk about Fissure Wizard, a card that is going to get rapidly more and more difficult to say. So this is 1 red for a 2/1, so good old Goblin Piker. And when it ETBs, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. We have had versions of this in the cube. They have been at 3 and 4 mana. This one's only 2 mana. I feel a lot better about card draw, or card filtering rather, on a 2-drop. That's my piece. That's all I think that needs to be said about this.
We did have almost a 2-drop version of this in Common Iguana, which some people who are not me felt lingered in the cube for a little too long. I love that card. I like this card a lot. I will comfortably admit that a 2-mana body is better for most of the things that our current group of red X decks want to do at the 2-mana spot, rather than a 1-mana silver bordered card.
Yeah.
So I'm generally in favor.
Yeah. I think this being something that I'm happy to turn sideways is a lot more appealing than a 1/3 in a color that primarily wants to turn things sideways. I think we can move on. Let's talk about... is there a point where we add in Fiery Temper with all these red discard effects? I don't think so. And my exact reasoning here is Fiery Temper really honks to pay full mana for. I think there's probably a discussion at some point to be had with that. I know there are some folks out there who've played Madness in their cubes to a reasonable effect, but I don't think we're quite there yet. Let's talk about Grotag Bugcatcher. This is a card that I think reads a lot worse than it is. So it's 1 in a red for a 1/2 with trample. Whenever it attacks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature in your party. Party is a mechanic we haven't talked about. A party is a cleric, a rogue, a warrior, and a wizard. They cannot be the same thing. Changelings don't put your party at 4. Notably, this does count itself. So this is on attacks a bear with trample. I'm just going to take a quick little perusal over to Cube Cobra here. Sorry that folks can't see this. So if I do type, so we've already got a warrior in this. Let's do type rogue. I see 2 things in red that are rogues and a handful of black rogues, a couple of blue ones. Let's do type cleric. Those are mostly white. That said, like, I'm pretty happy to place Syndic of Tithe next to this. And finally, let's talk about wizards. There are 3 wizards in red, a big chunk of them in blue. I think that a non-zero amount of time is... it seems good at stomping through tokens. Yeah, it stomps through tokens. It also just kind of sometimes is going to be a 3-power 2-mana creature. And sure, it's only on attacks, but again, if you're playing red, you should probably be turning things sideways. I think...
Hope.
Was that?
I said one would hope, yeah.
Yeah. I think that this is actually surprisingly reasonable. I think if you have this as a 2-mana 2/2 with trample, you're probably not stoked, but you're probably okay with it being your 2-drop. And I think if it gets bigger than that, you're just in Gravy Town. Like, if this swings as a 3/2, or is this the only card party we are considering today? I believe so. There is some complexity concern there. Like, you don't really want to make obscure mechanics in a product, in a cube that is a lot of folks' entry point to the format, but I don't know. I'm not super opposed to having one instance of a mechanic. 'Cause I think we only have like one buyback spell in the cube, maybe two. Like, I don't think that completely makes this not in consideration. I don't know. That's my piece on this.
Yeah,
I think it's a lot better than it looks at first glance.
Yeah, this is actually one that I originally skipped over in quick hits discussion. The thing that made me strongly reconsider it was running the search in Scryfall CMC 2, color red, and rules text trample at common. There's just no. So as something that has a different flavor of evasion and interacts positively with the various power boosting spells that we have, and also favorably with equipment. I like it a lot more than I did on first stream. Um, I would still, I think, like it if it just said this is a 2/2 with trample.
Yes, I think I would agree with you there. Like, I'm much more on board with this as a creature if it was just a 2/2 as the base rate and didn't count warriors, but I think that's one of those things where can't get everything we like. I think that's enough said on Grotech Bug Catcher. I'm glad to see I was not immediately denounced as a crazy person. It works with raid bombardment. Oh, that is an interesting point. Although does raid bombardment actually check both raid bombard?
I think you can, even if it were going to go up to 3, you could time it so that this resolves.
Yeah, raid bombardment does in fact work with this. That's interesting. That's a neat little thing. All right, let's continue on. Let's talk about the very boring topic of redundancy. Royal Eruption. It is a card that has been printed a whole bunch, but with some extra text stapled onto it. Royal Eruption is just another copy of Volcanic Hammer, which was in the cube at one point. There have been a lot of this effect. I think that this is a pretty reasonable one. Late game, it is gonna be a huge 5 mana, 5 damage spell. Sorcery speed's an obvious concern. Yep. I like the fact that it just goes face and sometimes just murders a person because you've gotten to the late game. I don't know what we would pull for this. Right now, we are not on the 1,000,001 Volcanic Hammers, and I do very much mean 1,000,001. There's a lot of this exact effect. 2 mana sorcery, 3 to any target. 7 mana, not 5. Yeah, like, it's not cheap for that kicker, but it is nice to have this fail mode of long drawn out game. I draw this, I have 7 lands, I'll just nug you for 5. Yeah, like, I would expect that 95% of the time, I'm willing to say less than once in 20 times, this is going to get cast for 5 damage. It's an analog of Burst Lightning, 5 damage for 4 for 4 damage, or 7 for 5 damage. Yeah, like, I think the flexibility of Volcanic Hammer not being a like joke spell that no one would ever run, and this having kicker stapled onto it is enough to convince me. Yeah, Fizzle points out pyrotechnics. Yeah,
like we have a bunch of different options. We have some expensive sorcery speed red removal, and some price expensive sorcery red removal in like Skewer the Critics. We're not opposed to giving you options to remove creatures or remove your opponent directly, in different manners. this doesn't feel like a slam dunk to me, but it also doesn't feel ridiculous. There are going to be definitely those games where you've just top decked 3 lands in a row and you and your opponent are both completely out of resources, but they're at 4 or 5 life. You're going to be happy to, on that 4th turn, top deck Royal Eruption.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where I like this. And it also feels less bad than what is the name of that miracle spell that I'm blanking on right now?
Bonfire?
No,
No.
ID Thunderous Wrath. That's what it is.
Oh, yeah. I guess technically we have access to that too.
We do, and this is one where, again, it has a mode where you pay a bunch of mana to deal 5. This has been eroded to any target before anyone asks. Not that it really matters for us. Sorry, that's my fault for having played formats with planeswalkers recently. I think the difference here is that Thunderous Wrath is the type of thing where someone miracles it and it's a bit of a feel bad. Like, oh, cool, you drew that as your first card for the turns. Now you get a Mega Bolt. Neat. Versus Royal Eruption being like, okay, yeah, this game dragged out. Sure, I guess I lost to Royal Eruption. Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much my thoughts on this. Let's get into green cards. I want to talk about green cards. Green cards are good now. Let's talk about Adventure Awaits. This is one in green. It is a sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. If you didn't put a card into your hand this way, draw a card. I think this card is cool. I think that I always just want to play impulse effects. It is more limited than versions of this effect we've seen before. It only gets a creature. This can't dig you to, a sorcery unless that sorcery happens to be exactly 6 cards from the top when you cast this. I just think that, this is kind of a... Let me just pull up some other commons. So we have, for example, Commune with Nature, which is just this, but it does not have the fail case of draw a card. This goes well with any Rex Sages we put in. I like. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. 5 cards is a lot in a limited deck. Like, assuming that you are on turn 2 casting this, you've drawn your opening 7 plus a card for turn, assuming you're on the play. So that's 8 out of there. So you're looking at a deck with 32 cards in it. This is looking through almost a 6th, or no, almost a 5th of your deck. I feel like I'm gonna hate seeing my Pestilence in the 4th slot down and watch it go by. Track down, so awesome. Yeah, like, this definitely does have the feel bad occasionally of going, oh, I wanted these cards. If this put this into the graveyard, I'd be all about it. I actually think that this is, like, completely fine without the graveyard text. We have stuff like commune
If mulch, the right answer.
We have mulch, we have
Winding
Way, we have commune with the gods. Like, there are plenty of these effects that have the graveyard text. I'm interested in trying this one out because while it's more narrow, the no fail case is really nice. Rare, but commune can simply miss, and that sucks. For 1 more mana, you get a choice and never miss drawing. That's kind of my feeling on this. Like, this card has a 0% chance of not putting a card in your hand. It misses out on things like graveyard. It misses out on having a variety of targets. I'm going to be very excited when Adventure Awaits with another card type on it is printed, which I don't think is that unreasonable a thing to expect to see. And I'm totally fine cutting Adventure Awaits at that point, but I think this is something I'd like to try out in the cube and see how it performs. So this would get in as like a probationary thing where we keep an eye on it and see, like, Is the fact that it doesn't put stuff in the graveyard a super huge downside? Is the fact that it's only a creature a super huge downside? Or does everything kind of buff out in the wash when you realize that you just have the words draw a card? That's it for me on this one. Anything else, Fizzle, or can we suit on?
I think the other thing to consider is that as functionally a cantrip at the 2-drop spot in green, this is not the equivalent of deliberate. Um, if you're casting your 2-drop go find a card spell in green, you've either had a very bad first turn, or you should have mulliganed. Like this isn't really a thing you're going to do on turn 2. This is a thing you're going to do on turn 4 or 5. This is, my hand is functionally empty. Maybe I have a giant growth. I am going to use my top deck Adventure Awaits to replace the draw for this turn and get any other threat to try to keep my foot on the gas.
Yeah. I think that's yeah. I think that's exactly where this fits. Like, this is a refuel for aggro, or decks that want to turn things sideways, I should say, since green's a little bit more mid-rangey. All right, let's continue on. I did just want to talk about this because I am a very dumb man who understands that when I see enough words, I start getting excited about a card, whether or not it's good. Scale of the Heights does a lot. It makes a creature bigger. You gain 2 life. You can play an additional land, and you draw a card. There are enough words on this card where I feel like I am obligated to bring it up. I don't think it's stellar. I think it's fine. But I would like to put it that other people could share opinions on this, and I would love to hear them, because I don't know.
Yeah, the one note that I had from chatting with some other friends in real life, how nice, was in our version of the cube, aside from an actual counterspell, the easiest way to cause this spell to fizzle is to kill that one target creature. So really, imagine that you are gaining 2 life, playing an additional land, drawing a card. This is, at sorcery speed, a diet version of Pulse of Marasa for me. Pulse of Marasa is not a pick one, pack one. Pack one, pick one. My brain is going good. But it is a card that I'm often happy to play, which tells me that I would frequently be happy to play this, or not happy, satisfied to play this, making the analysis difficult for me.
This is firmly one of those ones where I'm just like, I don't know. I would like more people's opinions, because it does a lot. It is a good point to bring up that the fact that if you can remove said target creature, this does just fizzle. That is something worth noting. But yeah, it just feels like there's a little bit more. Decontest. Mom, can we have Uro? I see what you're doing here. I get it. Haha. Very good. Yeah.
Oh, see, I would have said growth spiral.
Like this is in that weird realm of like kind of like growth spiral, kind of like Uro, kind of like a lot of things, and I just felt it was worth discussing. 1 mana more for a +1/+1 encounter and 2 life. Yep, that's what it is. It's pretty good that it's not just explore, which I find to be boring. Do you have enough counter synergies to make a counter matters more than combat damage? Not yet. It's something that has come up, and something that we will probably talk about at the end of the stream when we're sort of talking about more housekeeping stuff, that green-white is a maligned color pair that might be better served by having that as a theme, but that's a little bit of a later discussion. Let's talk about the last card that we have here for Zendikar Rising that we didn't talk about in the quick hits and people got upset about. And I think that's fair. And that's Spare Supplies. It's 2 mana for an artifact. When it enters the battlefield, it's tapped and you draw a card. And you can pay 2 and tap, sacrifice it, draw a card. I think this is fine. I don't know. I'm like not super pumped on it, but it seems like a reasonable card. It cycles twice. It unfortunately doesn't cycle twice in the same turn. Like if this was or a 4-mana colorless divination, I'd be fine. I'd be much happier about it, but like I don't know. This seems reasonable. Do we have something in the cube right now that's like not impressive in colorless?
I mean, I think the historic view that we've taken towards the colorless slots have been, they're kind of the glue that holds things together. So not especially impressive is unfortunately the baseline, or can be the baseline for some cards. Um,
I don't know. I just feel like this when you say the thing about like how we have treated colorless as kind of the glue that binds stuff together. This is a very glue feeling card where it's just like, okay, well, I've got 22. I could just jam spare supplies. It's basically a cycler. I don't know.
yeah, slots 20 through 23. This is absolutely fine for that. If I were, this is a very hot take, off the cuff kind of thing. Uh, this gets you for one more mana, 2 cards instead of Wayfarer Baubles 1 card, but it
Ooh.
could be anything. Instead of a basic land, it could be anything, even a basic land.
I was gonna say it could be anything, even a basic land. Yeah, I don't know. I think this is a reasonable thing. It does provide a level of consistency with hitting your land drops that some decks will want in terms of just drawing more cards. Um, yeah, I think there's a pretty reasonable argument that like Spare Supplies is a reasonable card that could get in the cube. It's definitely going to be one that we go to deliberation on because I don't know. I feel like this is very middling and just fun. Were there any other Zendikar Rising cards that folks wanted to discuss that I can pull up for us?
Uh, I don't think we have to have a super in-depth discussion about it, but I would throw up Gnarlid Colony real quick, just because we just talked about the 1/1 counter.
That's fair. That's fair. Gnarlid Colony. I still don't understand quite what a Gnarlid is. They look like weird bears. So this is, appropriately enough, not typed as such, but it is a grizzly bear with more text on it. This is a 2-mana 2/2 creature beast, kicker 2 and a green. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it, so you can get a 5-mana 4/4. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample. If we go with +1/+1 counters as a thing that you can do in this cube, I think this is quite good. It's on rate. Sometimes this will be a sneaky overrun style effect where a board stall just suddenly turns into you swinging in and eating all their stuff and nugging them for a few points. But yeah, I think this is completely reasonable if we decide to go with a +1/+1 counter sub theme for white so that it has more of an identity. I see Dauntless Unity in the chat. This is a team pump spell. So it's 1 and a white for creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn, or you can pay 4 mana, creatures get +2/+1 until end of turn. Honestly, this is pretty fine. Like, we've had riffs of 4 mana, your stuff gets +2/+2. Yeah, I think this is something that we could consider. It's going to be taking a look at how many. I like it better than Fortify. Interesting. Yeah, I guess it really comes down to like how frequently are Fortify and Borrowed Graces modes where they buff toughness actually used. And I'd hazard a guess it's not a whole ton.
My at least my anecdotal experience from the relatively recent past. When I'm doing that, it doesn't really matter if my creatures survive. So I don't care if I'm adding toughness. I'm just alpha striking.
Yeah,
So
I don't know.
yeah,
I this is one that we're going to talk about in behind closed doors. I don't hate it though. I will give you that. I see Tyrant's Blood commenting about a Coom Hellhound. A Coom Hellhound is a 0/1 for a red. It has landfall +2/+2 until end of turn. You may notice that we do not run step links in this cube. I am not high on these because we don't particularly have a lands theme for any color. There will be times where this is very good. There will be times where it is incredibly middling. I don't think this supports what Mono Red is trying to do, and I think it's barely supporting some other stuff. I'm not huge on it. That's my take on it. I think there are formats where this is quite good. Without fetches, you aren't breaking it, which makes it good. Yeah, like, sure, there will be the dream deck that has this adventurer's gear and both evolving wilds and terramorphic and just ruins people. But for every time that happens, there's going to be times where this just kind of hangs around as a sometimes 2/3, sometimes 0/1. Also, the fact that this eats literally every piece of removal in this format is not super great. Especially like, I don't know, this getting bounced after you've pumped it. I am not huge on this here, but I think it's something that if you had more of a dedicated lands archetype, could be pretty reasonable. I also see what else? Blood Beckoning. Let's talk about Blood Beckoning. I believe I remember what this one is. Yep, okay. So this is a black for a sorcery. Return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. If the spell was kicked, instead return 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. I would like to also talk about a card that I don't believe ever actually made in, but I think is a good comparison. Let's talk about Wander in Death. Wander in Death is always 2 creatures, or I guess up to 2 creatures. It's 3 mana, always, but also has the cycling on it. I'd take Omen of the Dead better than this. Yeah. I don't know. Like, for me, I think that the utility of being able to cycle it away is a little bit higher for me. I think Blood Beckoning at 1 mana is just kind of not impressing me. I don't know. This.
it's one of those. To me, it's one of those situations where instead of additive distraction, it's if I'm not getting the kicker version, I am disappointed and also probably losing.
Yeah, like I'm not here to play. What is that card? There is just like Disentomb, the 1 mana instant version of this, and I don't think that adding on a mode that likely takes up a good chunk of your turn to do it is super great. If we were to go for one of these return 2 things, I would prefer something like Wander in Death, where it has utility if you just need to hit a land drop or draw into stuff. Yeah, that's my general take on this. It's not that Blood Beckoning is like absolute trash. It's just I think there's a better version. I also saw Skyclave Squid. This card is missing a word that I thought was on it. I thought this thing flew for some reason. And now you might be saying, Mike, that sounds stupid. It's a squid. Obviously, it won't fly. That was me wanting this card to be good. I don't think this card is great. I think a 3/2 body for 2 mana is not blowing anyone's socks off, and the fact that it does not always attack is not super great. I really like the art. It does bother me slightly that this appears to be a cuttlefish more than a squid, but yeah, I don't think this gets in just because it does. It's a 3/2 with downside. I don't think it's doing enough. What else we got? I see Arden Electromancer. Let's talk about that one.
The
this
the
thing.
refund.
Yeah. All right. Here's my question. Arden Electromancer. How much mana do you have to get out of this to be happy?
I mean, the red now, for no discernible reason, gets 3/2s for 3 mana at common. So you need to get at least one before it's good. One is the baseline. Our other 3/2s for 2 mana in my good friend Orc? Question mark? Shell Raider.
Yeah,
Hellraiser,
Orcus
excuse me.
Hellraiser.
Which does not have an enter the battlefield, but does have a dies trigger that is maybe worth a card.
There's a non-zero amount of warriors that feed into this. God, this is one of those things where, like, I can see this very easily winding up just being a 3-mana 3/2 because you don't have the 1-drop to make use of it. Like, the extra mana it's given you. I think that on turn 3 you want this to go this into a 2-drop. There's not enough 1-drops to make this workable on turn 3. I think that's kind of where I'm at on this. Like, I don't think you're going to live the dream nearly as much as something like a Burning Tree Emissary, which is what this reminded me of when I first saw it. I will note it makes Grotag Bugcatcher a little bit better should we wind up including that, but this is like Burning Tree Emissary, but needs 3 cards to work instead of 2. That's a pretty fair comparison. A 3/2 body is deceptively a lot better than a 2/2. There's a great article, I believe Ari Lax wrote it, about why a 3/2 is a very important body to have in limited formats. I highly recommend reading it. I think it's a really good piece of work on that. Burning Tree is absurd compared to this. Yeah, the other thing is, like, if you're in red-green, like, Burning Tree does just, like, fix mana and also is basically a colorless card. It's really annoying that you can't use that mana on the Raging Goblin we have. Do we have a Raging Goblin in right now?
No, we don't. Raging Goblin is just the 1/1 haste.
But we do have Fanatical Firebrand, which is that plus the plus it can Mog Fanatic itself. Yeah.
Maybe they meant Frenzied Goblin?
Frenzied Goblin is also in there. Like, I think this is complete. Oh, you're saying we can't use it for the attack trigger. That makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. Electromancer is one of those things where the highs are going to be really high and the lows are going to be, like, very middling. I still think it's probably reasonable. It's just not something that, unless there's a huge outcry for, I'm keen on putting in. What else do we have? I think that was. Did I miss anything in here from the chat? Just trying to make sure because chat's going pretty good. Oh, I do see Jiraga Visionary. If I remember correctly, this is an Elvish Visionary, but big. Yeah, it's 4 mana for 3/2. When ETBs, draw a card. I don't know if this is what you want to be ramping into. It's gonna keep you going, but I don't know. Nothing about this excites me. I don't think we're particularly wanting for, like, 4-drops that do a thing. I think we have 4-drops that do a little bit more proactive stuff. Like, even just comparing this to something like Fierce Witch Stalker, which is just a 4/4 trample at 4. I don't know. The body compared with the utility of drawing a card just ain't doing it for me. Let's unless anyone else has some stuff from ZNR that they want to talk about. Hagra Constrictor. So this is a 3-mana creature. Enters with 2 +1/+1 counters on it, so it's a 3-mana 2/2. Good old Hill. Is it Hill Giant or Grey Ogre? Grey Ogre. Grey Ogre stats.
Grey Ogre.
Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has Menace. So this is a 3-mana Menace thing. Let me just do a quick double check here. So if I say...
Yeah, black has several of the creatures that have counters.
Oh boy. Oh boy, this makes Carrion Feeder evasive. That's something. Actually, I'm starting to realize there's a lot more stuff that this potentially makes a very legit threat than I thought.
Yeah, the interesting thing that Hagra Constrictor does that Gnarlid Colony can't do is turn your zombie armies, your amass tokens, into reasonable threats.
That is
making +1/+1 counters more of a black or weirdly blue thing. Selesnya.
Huh. This is definitely one of those things where it's interesting. Mutate Cavern Whisperer onto this for a double menacing 6/6. Good lord. Cool. It's always great when I get a Final Destination-esque view into my death later. I mean, this thing does also just wear equipment well and kind of incidentally buff some stuff. I hadn't really given this a lot of thought, but like, I don't dislike that. I don't know. Yeah, chat, you've done a good job. You've shown me a card that I think is maybe viable. Interesting. I'm gonna have to think about this one. I love that folks brought this up.
I will note that a quick search for Menace, and of course there are Menace, Intimidate, Fear, and all sorts of other make combat difficult mechanics for commons. Typically the bodies are 2/3 or 3/2 with no other abilities, but this this potentially has the upside or maybe horrible additive distraction of making you think about whether your token creatures are creatures that have +1/+1 counter instead of base static.
I would think that it's like additive distraction if there weren't like literally just looking here like a bunch of other +1/+1 counters incidentally in a cube. Like it's definitely one of those bizarre things where incidentally we've just kind of got them in a bunch of different colors. Like look at Thunderdrake, for example, the 2/3 that gets bigger every time you cast your second spell. That's
for double spelling.
Yeah, that one's +1/+1 counters. We've got a couple of riot things in the cube. Like even this with a young wolf that's died. You know, a voracious Typhon. Like think about that. I escape my
escape is big game.
I escape my voracious Typhon. I have a 7/7 with Menace. Figure out what you're doing. I do think that like it's not an absolute slam dunk, but I do think like this one definitely missed my initial passes, and I do like this a lot more than I expected. Menace is sneakily really good. Especially if you can put it on big creatures. Like if you can get a Menace 5/5, or even better, like sometimes I really prefer like a small Menace creature because it lets you put someone in an awkward position of, is this unblockable or do you want to double block it? And like let my other stuff through. Yeah. Thanks. That was a good catch. Who was the one who Speedy. Yeah, thanks. Solid grab there. All right. Do you have anything else?
I don't think there was anything else in base list. Just 3 cards that were not part of the set that I wanted.
Yeah. Do we want to
Quickly.
get into some of those? I can pull up the first one we've got here. I'm surprised that you were the one who talked about this and not me. Let folks know.
I don't even know which thing.
It's Bonder's ornament.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
How about you give us the pitch on this one?
Sure. So Bonder's Ornament is an artifact. Technically, it's part of Ikoria, but it's part of the Ikoria Commander set. So we saw it, and it's there. It is an artifact for 3 generic mana, and you can either tap it to add 1 mana of any color, so sort of reasonable ramp, definitely reasonable fixing. For 4 and tap, each player who controls a permanent named Bonder's Ornament draws a card. You will, of course, only be drawing 1 card unless you have an artifact clone in your proper cube. The reason that I thought about it, that is correct, Decontest. There is no foil for it.
That hasn't stopped us before.
Yeah, that's accurate. I definitely have some non-foil versions of things, including a card that Stib signed for me, foil. Like, I'm not going to replace it because it's signed. But the thing that made me think about it was in Double Masters, we've got a downshift for Magnifying Glass, which is similar 3-mana artifact for 3-mana artifact with tap to add colorless mana, not generic, not 1-mana colors, not fixing, just ramp. With the activated ability, pay 4 and tap to investigate, just to say create a clue artifact that you pay additional mana to draw a card. And yes, simple MSW, you are correct. Magnifying Glass is probably bad. One of the things that we were talking about periodically in the Discord is green and white sometimes end up with a lot of this mana in the mid to late game and nothing to do with it, or at least nothing repeatable to do with it. Either of these gives you something repeatable to do with it. Magnifying Glass is not super appealing for your blue deck that's going to do something every turn or make more effective use of them, was the theory behind Magnifying Glass. But Bonder's Ornament is just more efficient and more powerful. Honestly, I like the art more.
The art is a strong call. Lindsay Look is a deeply underrated magic artist. She draws a lot of very pretty rocks, and is a delight from the times I've met her at Magic Fests, I believe is what they were called before that all ended. Yeah, Simples point out that this is great in a black-blue control deck. Like, it's cool if you get this in, like, a more creature-oriented deck, but boy, howdy do I love holding up a removal spell and then just drawing a card when my opponent doesn't play a good threat. I think this card is very good. I think the fact that it ramps you until it gets to a point where you're a little low on cards and then you start drawing cards is pretty amazing. I think that, like, the 3-mana generate any color rocks have always been a bit disappointing up until this, because at a certain point they're just not great. And this one has the fail case of, oh, I'm not using all my mana anymore. Cool, I'm just gonna draw a card every turn. Like, I'm gonna have my little personal Howling Mon. I think this card is very good. I think we're going to have a long discussion on it. Decontest, I think pack one, pick one material. Hell yes, it is. I would very readily pack one, pick one this, and maybe not even like just for degenerate $5 stuff. Like, I think any deck that can at some point go, okay, I will pay 3 mana for a mana rock and, you know, be happy about that, is going to be fine with that. I think it's very good. It really comes down to, is this something that we think is too good? If I'm being honest. And we definitely did pass this one over when we were initially reviewing Ikoria. So it is something that we do need to reevaluate. That said, let's...
Before you move on, can you replace magnifying glass with Jamade Tome?
If I can spell it. Ooh, got it in
I can't do that.
Jam
Nice.
Data. Oh, it's just this, but it's more expensive and doesn't add mana. Oh boy.
Yeah. So I am an old enough Magic player to recall when the deck was amazing. Brian Weissman's the deck. Weissman no longer being in good favor because cheating allegations. But the just play card advantage until you beat your opponent has lived in my brain for a good 20 years now. And every single time I see a card like Bonder's Ornament, I think, man, I wish I could play the deck, but in Standard. Also that I was good enough to play the deck, but in Standard. And Bonder's Ornament screams to me in the deck, but...
Yeah, I think like the best home for this is some sort of dirtily control. And I think it really does come down to, do we want more tools for that type of deck? Yeah. All right, let's continue on. Your next one you have here in your little selection is Fairy Duelist.
I read all this when I was asleep.
So yeah, this is a card that I actually think is pretty solid. But I'll let you talk about this.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So the short version of why this is the thing I'm thinking about. I unfortunately don't remember which person in the Discord commented on it, but there's Zulaport Duelist, which is similar text, but no flying. So not, yeah, perfect. Not evasive, but it still does the blunting an attacker, potentially flashing in, kill said attacker. Gives blue what feels like an awkward Doomblade, if you will, or a flash threat. You pop in at the end of turn, start beating face for 1 damage a turn. It's interesting enough. It gives your control decks that maybe don't need more to do something to do. And in the case of Fairy Duelist, which but I like more, is that 2 mana body. It's just it encourages the things that many of our blue variants are trying to do. Could be your second spell in a turn, combat after combat on your opponent's turn, trigger. Oh gosh, you just said it. Thunder Drake, excuse me.
Yeah, I really like Fairy Duelist. This was really solid in its limited environment. I think like this is something that is completely fine. I've run it in other cubes, and I think it could have a home here. It does a really decent impression of a Doomblade, and sometimes even better. Like if your opponent just has some 1/1 spuds, like, you know, making another combat no longer a trade, and now your thing's eating their thing for like a medium-sized creature, and then also just like eating off a token is completely reasonable. Again, like it's evasive, so it wears equipment decently and will occasionally punch in for more damage than it looks like. Yeah, I think like this is a solid include and one that we should look at. It also means that like blue's trickiness now kind of has a little bit more interaction if you have some instant speed removal. Like it does help kind of negate some of those feel bads of counter spells. Flicker in blue now, it happens over and over. Yeah, I mean, if you want to flicker this, like I think there's better things to flicker in the queue, but sometimes this will get it done. Yeah, I think Zulaport Duelist, not good enough for the cube, but thank you for reminding us that there's something good for the cube. Yeah. And finally,
I do think
ooh,
the biggest, I guess, worry is we've recently seen a lot of blue variant decks uh, do very well, at least with your review of the GO version of the Popper Cube. So if this feels like just a straight up power increase, I might be hesitant to vote for it despite bringing it up myself.
I think anything that forces blue decks to play to the board a little bit more is something I'm in favor of, but that's a
That's
longer
fair.
that's a longer discussion
Yeah.
for another day. Finally on your list you had Broken Wings. Ah, yes. So this is an upgrade to a card that I always forget from Fate Reforged that does all of this stuff for 4 mana. So it either nukes an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. This seems kind of reasonable. I don't know. Sell me on this one.
I'm trying to look at the Fate Reforged card now. Forgotten. I probably should have limited this to green. Return of the Earth? Yeah, we got that.
All right, I can pull that one up.
Yeah, so it's not essential. It's just that you said it, and my brain wasn't going to be satisfied.
No. I understand.
So one, I have to say, aesthetically, I hate that they've chosen to not write this in the way that they write modal spells. Don't know why they did this. It stresses me out so much. But in part because we've been discussing more broadly what can we do to offer various colors options to fight artifacts and enchantments. This is, it's a sideboard card. This is pick 7, pick 8. Um, when you're already committed to green, and to have to deal with pestilence, all of white's various pacifisms, but it's also for green going to deal with creatures with flying, and there are a reasonable number of those, including some token creatures, weirdly out of red, or things like Ogarden Dragon. It's once it's activated. There we go. It's my brain. So these are sorry. This set of abilities on this card as removal seems like potentially good enough. I don't know that I'm super excited about bringing it in, but as we keep seeing modal sideboard kind of cards that could be played in best of one style Magic, it means that we have tools. I basically want to hear from our community what kind of artifact and removal will make you guys feel most comfortable with this taking up our limited cube slots, knowing the kind of artifacts that we're potentially trying to remove, and keeping in mind that like we could bring in something that maybe is busted, Bonder's Ornament, if we really mess up. Let's see. Chaves is saying the only interaction that I can think of is, oh yeah, so he's just talking about not doing this modal length. Copy the spell. I actually don't know if you get to select. Yeah, I think you're probably stuck with whatever you chose.
Yeah. I believe if I remember judge courses that I have looked at in the past, I believe that when you copy a modal spell, it copies modes. And since this isn't modal, it does allow you to target something different that could be any one of those three. Yeah, I don't mind this as like a kind of catch-all. It's still kind of sideboardy. I don't know. I think like it's just barely not there. If we got a naturalized that had a fight mode stapled onto it, I think that's the point where we have a slam dunk for me personally. I don't know if that's something we'll ever get. but I do think like that's the kind of thing where if we see something like that, that's the point where we can kind of go for one of these. Green needs more slam dunks than cute cards. I think that's somewhat fair. I think like honestly, if we want a way to deal with flyers, if I'm gonna be completely honest, I need to double check something right now. Because
we've got a lot of reach in green at the 3 and 4 and 5 spots.
We've got a lot of reach green, but I'm gonna just pull out someone here. I'm gonna talk for a moment on Bitterbow Sharpshooters. This card is not a smart card. It is, however, a very large brick. And sometimes there is a need for subtlety and artistry, and sometimes you just need a brick to throw at someone. Like, if we wanted to deal with more flyers, I think stuff like this, where it's just like, okay, cool, this thing attacks in as a 4/4. That's kind of hard to block profitably. And it also sits back and eats flyers. There's this. There's also a Sentinel Spider, which is this with another green pip. But yeah, I think we're close on that card. I think like those 3 modes are all relevant. I think the catch is they're not relevant 100% of the time when you compare to something like a Braid, where like if your opponent is on no creatures, that is sure your fail case. But if your opponent's on no creatures and no artifacts, like I just want to see that deck. Like I think you're willing to take the L on like not getting every bit of value out of Braid if your opponent has drafted just like the world's most bizarre deck that somehow functions. So I think when it comes to stuff like that, I think like when we get a green Braid, like even if it's just like 2 mana fight or bite and nuke an enchantment or something like that, that's the point where I'm going to be like, okay, cool, we can put this in. So I think it's a little bit off. All right. If anyone else has opinions about Broken Wings, we can talk about it. But if not, I think we can move on to some of our sort of housekeepy stuff. If that sounds good. All right. Let's talk about 2 things. There's 2 color pairs I want to talk about. One is green white and the other is blue green. Blue green has had a long history of being, oh, it's weird ramp. Oh, it's like kind of tempo-y. A while ago, a user from the Discord, Taters, wrote to me about some of the stuff that they were doing to draft blue green tempo. And I think that is kind of the direction we're going to lean in for that color pair. I have been very convinced by some of the arguments that were presented as to how you can draft it in the current cube. I think moving forward, blue-green's going to find that as their home. So a lot of stuff that allows you to use your mana late game, a lot of sort of protect a couple of evasive threats kind of play patterns, that's probably where we're headed for that. We don't have anything that we have our eye on at this exact moment. Again, this is more for transparency towards fans of the cube. Those are going to be things that we're thinking about. The other pair to talk about is green-white. We kind of touched on it here, but there are options like... Oh, come on now. Why can I not drag this tab into this window? All right, fine. I'll do a manual copy and paste, like some sort of caveman. So we have stuff like Crowned Ceratok. We have the Gnarlid colony that we spoke about today. We have Hogwarts Constrictor, which is outside of that color pair strictly, but like we're kind of getting there slowly but surely with payoffs for +1/+1 counters. Yeah, there's stuff like Common Bond. I can pull that one up, which is on theme for, you know, the Pauper Cube, for what that matters. Spoiler, it's not a whole bunch, in my opinion. I'm always good gameplay over cuteness. We've got Einok Bondkin, which gives stuff first strike. Like, there's just a lot of these sort of incidental things that reward you for putting +1/+1 counters on stuff. And also, just in general, making things bigger is good. Sometimes you just make creature big and creature kill opponent. Again, yeah, travel prep we've got. There's all sorts of options. And this is one of those things where +1/+1 counters have been a part of the game for quite some time. And as a result, there's just kind of density at this point. So this is something we'll probably discuss again in the committee and talk about if this is something that we can kind of move towards. It won't be a super sudden thing. You're not going to wake up one day and see that the update is 50 cards long. I think saying, like, I don't want to commit to this, but there will likely be some crossover just by nature of the fact that, like, there is not a color or color pair or even 3 colors that get +1/+1 counters. They're just kind of all over the place. So there might be like a focus on it in green and white, but there might also be like a slightly Abzan tint where, you know, you jam the Hagaru Constrictor, or, you know, you might wind up splashing blue for the Thunder Drake because it's a really great finisher with all these Lord effects. I mean, I'm not gonna advocate for this, but, like, who knows? Maybe one of your drafters one day manages to pull off 5 color +1/+1 counters, and it's just ridiculous. Pollen Bright Druid's a great example. It allows us to start reconsidering proliferate things. Things where, like, the base mode wasn't stellar, but the fact that if I have a couple of +1/+1 counters scattered around, we can jam them in. But yeah, I think, like, if we bring this in, it'll be primarily green-white, and then there'll be, like, traces of it in other places just by nature of creature get bigger, creature probably okay. And I think giving green-white sort of more of an identity when it comes to what it's trying to do, rather than just, oh, we're the third color that cares about tokens. The third color pair, I should say, that cares about tokens, I think would be something that we can kind of help rehabilitate what it does. Especially because I don't know how many folks were around for the last time, but I think it was the last Q&A where I talked about results of that poll that we ran. And green-white was the least popular deck. No one listed it as one of their favorite decks to play, and multiple people listed it as one of the decks that they felt was the worst. So by kind of leaning into this, like, I don't think we're going to go all in on, like, these very narrow lords, but they're going to be there. And more importantly, I think there's a version of this counters deck that just plays reasonable bodies and then goes, ha ha ha, I'm going to cast Common Bond and target my 2 hexproof creatures. Isn't this cool? Aren't you having fun now? And, like, I think that's a completely valid, like, strategy. So yeah, I think we're going to talk about this a little bit more in back channels, but yeah, I think there's a lot of cool stuff. Oh, someone mentioned Phantom Nomad. I do want to bring that one up because I would really like to play that in Pauper Cube. Phantom Nomad is a fun little ditty. This is 2 mana for a 2/2. It's a bear, but if damage would be dealt to it, prevent that damage, remove a +1/+1 counter instead. Moving on +1/+1 counters will not deal with card advantage issues of Selesnya. However, I have a lot of opinions on the ongoing discourse of white getting card draw. I don't want to get into them here. I do not think that card advantage is the only thing that is a problem with green-white in the queue right now.
If everything is super mid-range and we don't have a way for Selesnya to close games out via evasion or getting their is basically big enough to end it, yes, card advantage matters.
Mm-hmm.
But we're continuing to try to tweak the Selesnya color pair and some other creatures so that they are able to finish the game before it matters that your opponent might have drawn 4 extra cards.
Yeah. I think one of the issues is that white does not get good card advantage. Like, if you're going to get card advantage, it's going to be through green. It's going to be stuff like track down. It's going to be stuff like commune with the gods. It's going to be that type of effect that gets you your card advantage. And I don't think it's worth putting in, like, there's the 3 mana, like, I think it's a 2/2 that draws both players a card. Like, I think the goal here is, like, making sure that white green is doing stuff that makes it less appealing for your opponent just to sit there and durdle. Like, again, when we put in the hexproof creatures, this was part of our impetus for that, is forcing these slower decks to actually play to the board. I think there's a lot of discussion that's going to go on with this, and we will probably reach out to community as a whole to see if y'all have opinions on specific things we're thinking about. This will not be overnight. You will not wake up and have an update with 50 cards added in. So I do want to just assuage any fears of that, but this is something that we're going to look into as a potential solution for how we can make a color pair that historically has not performed super well into something that people are excited to play, or at least okay with playing. Like, I just think that the poll that went out when we did that indicated that folks were very down on that color pair, and I think the first focus I would like is to get us to a point where folks are at least not down on it and neutral on it, and then go from there and reassess how we can kind of make it a color pair that folks are actually excited to play. We don't expect it to be the best, but we also don't want it to be the clear worst, if that makes any sense. And that's my piece on green white. Fizzle, do you have anything else?
No, that is sadly more articulate than anything I could have come up with. Green white, for those of you who have seen attempts that I made at the 10 seal decks, green white was one where I was just like, well, this is a fair card. This is a fair card. And there's nothing that I did a Selesnya deck that seemed like this is a particularly exciting card or 2-card interaction that I think is going to push the color pair past other color pairs.
Yeah, and I think thankfully there's a lot of tools that can help us play with this, which means that we're not going to be in a situation where it's like, okay, cool, this would work if we had like 2 or 3 more pieces. Like, there's a lot of options out there, and it's definitely something where there's a lot of knobs and dials that we can fidget with until we get something that folks are happy with. Yeah, I think that brings us kind of to the end of this. If anyone in the chat has more questions or things they'd like to talk about in general, we can take a few of those. And then I'm probably going to go off and make myself some lunch and get on with my weekend. But I do want to just have a chance to open it up for folks to voice anything that they feel strongly about. I'll wait a few minutes to let chat catch up.
Checking the Discord to see if there's chat there. No, people are talking Charizard. So probably no question for us there.
All right. Looks like nothing popping up in the chat real quickly, but I'm gonna give it another second because someone could be typing out a little essay. Don't wanna rush folks through this. Any movements on Midnight Scavengers? Yeah, Midnight Scavengers can probably go. It's something we've been talking about for a while. It's something that we'd like to clean up because it does have rules text on it that and a funky back that make it seem like there's something else there. I think cleaning it up would be a nice thing, just to kind of go, okay, cool. Longshot Squad or Midnight Scavengers, like, don't worry about it. There's nothing to do with the backside of this. There are other options we can slot in that place and clean up a little bit of extra rules detritus that could lead to a potentially subpar experience with the cube. So yes, thank you for reminding us on that, Chaves. We will try and figure out something to swap in. Yes, there's Cadaver Imp. There's a handful of other options. Even the Wander in Death that we spoke about today, while not a creature, is still the type of thing where it gets back two things in the mid to late game and probably changes how the game is going. Yeah, there's
Black just doesn't get Gravediggers anymore, and we get Bone Pick.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Again, thank you for the reminder. We will definitely look at replacing that just because it is a little bit awkward, especially for newer players.
Now I've literally just this second realized the name is going to just kill me forever, but the 2/2 trample is also a guy. That is exciting for Warren players.
Ooh, that's right. Yeah, the line of tribal text that I always forget about on Warren Instigators. That is true. All right then. If folks don't have anything else for the counters theme, I think Drowsing Pteranodon deserves greater consideration for M20. Oh yeah, the 2-mana 3/3 that can only attack or block if there's a 4 power thing in play. Yeah, I think that's when you have enough travel preps. I think that's the type of card that can very easily be good. Yeah, because let me just see. Drowsing Pteranodon in 1. Let's pull up travel prep. Because, yeah, you could very easily just go turn 2 Drowsing Pteranodon and then travel prep onto it and start swinging with your 4/4 and probably like a 2/2. Yeah, I think this is something that we could look into. It does have it does feel better to make this your 4/4 rather than relying on another creature sticking around, because then your opponent gets the pseudo 2-for-1 of okay, I'll kill your 4 power thing and now Drowsing Pteranodon's a defender. Yeah, I think that's a solid one. We will probably again, there's going to be some discussion within the Discord, and this may be one of those things where we break this up into the Double Masters and Zendikar Rising update, and then there's a archetype update in between sets if Wizards ever lets us rest. Yeah, it's also a little bit more difficult with current. I believe the term is unprecedented. Oh, I was going to say unprecedented times that we live in. It's a little bit tricky to get as much testing as we normally would. So yeah, there's definitely some things that are not going to move as quickly or in the same way as they did prior to our current situation with regards to being able to play Magic together. But yeah, I think that brings us pretty much to the end here. I would really love to thank everyone for joining us today who could. I hope you have wonderful rest of your respective weekends. And we'll try to get this update out the door as soon as we can. No promises on that, but hopefully within a week we should have a pretty good idea of where we're at. And we can communicate with folks in the meantime to make sure that folks feel heard. A VOD of this will be up hopefully later today. It's always a bit of a tricky one with the Twitch YouTube integration. So hopefully we can get that up so that folks who couldn't attend get a chance to peek what we're thinking about and give us some feedback. All right. In that case, I am going to call this. Thanks everyone for coming out.
Thanks.